Welcome back into the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap, presented by Full Press Coverage. Sap, we spent a long time for the past couple of weeks, I'd say, and even before the season, talking about the in-season tournament, because this is the first year the NBA has ever done it. There's been a lot of buzz about, what it's going to look like. Is it a good idea? Is it a bad idea? Obviously, the courts have been very flashy. There's been tons of storylines, and now it's gotten to the point where we are in the next round. We have stopped playing group play, and we have winners of group play, and now we've gone to the single elimination knockout stage of the tournament, which is going to have feature 2 games on this upcoming Monday and then 2 games on this upcoming Tuesday. There were ultimately 6 group winners and then 2 wildcard teams to make it so it's 8. The matchups are as follows, Sap. The Celtics, who won their group, are going to play the Pacers in Indianapolis because the Pacers won their group with a better scoring margin. The other game on Monday is going to be the Pelicans, who won their group against the Kings in Sacramento. And the first game on Tuesday will be the Knicks, who were the wild card from the Eastern Conference, and the Milwaukee Bucks, who won their group. And then the last of these games will be the Phoenix Suns, who won the Western Conference wild card, playing the Lakers in Los Angeles as the Lakers won their group. The winners of those games, Sap, will then go on next Thursday, so a week from today, to play in Las Vegas in the Final Four. And then the final game of this in-season tournament will be a week from this Saturday, so Saturday, December 9th, and they will crown a champion. So a lot of the storyline, Sap, now with the in-season tournament has been how they decide who advances, these scoring margins, which has resulted in teams trying to run up the score. Jason Tatum, some other players have spoken out against it. So, Sap, the long way, a very long-winded explanation of saying to you, Sap, what do you think about the process by which they determine who has gotten into this next stage of the in-season tournament?
I would cut out one step. I would have more games actually involved in group play. So instead of 3 5-team pods, I would have 2 pods per conference, one with 7 teams, one with 8 teams. So it would be more games in the pod steps, right? So you would have 6 games in one pod and 7 in the other. And the winner of the pod would be the representative and go right to the semifinals. I would eliminate the quarterfinals, and the tiebreaker would be head to head. So you don't have to worry about scoring margin, which, made it kind of wonky the other night when the Celtics had to win by 23 and they won by 27 and they were fouling Andre Drummond, and it got kind of uncomfortable, which I thought was entertaining because, look, the Celtics were still trying to advance to this quarterfinals. The Bulls were completely out of it, and if Drummond can't hit free throws, that's more on him than the Celtics. We're talking about a player who's made $150 million in his career and he can't hit half of his free throws. That's on him, not on the Celtics. But I think by doing that, you would eliminate the quarterfinals and you just have those pods. So you take 7 teams in the Eastern Conference, the other 8 teams in the Eastern Conference, those would be the 2 pods. Whoever wins those, they meet in the semifinals, and you do the same thing in the Western Conference. You'd have a few more games, which I think is a good thing because these games were competitive. The fans seemed to like it. And instead of having quarterfinals, you'd have semifinals. Those 4 teams advance to Vegas for the semifinals and the finals. And the big winner here is the NBA, because when was the last time you were talking about the NBA this much on national sports talk radio or local sports talk radio in late November, early December? Like the last time this probably happened, Jet, was a decade ago. Remember when Greg Popovich sat Tim Duncan, Manu Ginobili, and Tony Parker in a regular season game against the Heat? So that was kind of like negative press, but as often is the case, negative press is better than no press. So people were talking about that on national sports talk radio. That's probably the last time we talked that much about the NBA in late November, early December. So good for the NBA. They kind of made some inroads on everyone talking about the NFL, which quite frankly has had a wretched season. When you think about it, the games are just so many
it's been
of them
one of the
unwatchable.
most forgettable NFL seasons that I can recall.
It really has. College football.
Now the playoffs could change that, right, Sap?
Sure.
If it's good playoffs.
Yeah, if you got Philadelphia playing San Francisco for the NFC Championship and the Chiefs against somebody in the AFC, yeah, maybe we'll have great conference championship Sunday games. The wild card round could be a snooze fest as well. But college football has been better than the NFL this year. College football regular season is so important because one loss, you slip up. But look at what happened last weekend. You had Michigan beating Ohio State, Alabama coming from behind to beat Auburn, Arizona continues to play very well. They're not going to get into the Final Four, but Washington over Washington State. Now your Oregon Ducks are in a position, if they can beat Washington for the Pac-12 championship, they will get to the national semifinals, right? I would think, unless a few things happen against them. But college football, definitely more interesting than pro football. And again, let's go back to the basketball part of the podcast. But yeah, the winner's the NBA, because we're talking about it. I mean, we're going to be doing a podcast every week anyway. We'd find something else to talk about. But this is a subject that's being really talked about on national sports talk radio, like in the A block, which is pretty amazing considering we're right in the heart of the NFL season and we're coming to the conclusion of the college football season. So it's good for the NBA.
Without a doubt. And, like you just said, it's a late November game that you're not just paying attention to, but you're scoreboard watching the other games too. And you're counting the amount of points that you need to. So it was I've obviously watched basketball for most of my life, for 30 plus years. You have watched it for longer, Sap. I can't recall watching a game except for towards maybe the last week of the season where you're actively watching the other scoreboards as it's happening. So it was a very unique viewing experience. They're putting the scores up on the screen, in the middle of the Celtics game, like it was an NCAA tournament game. Like you're going to see, okay, well, this team is going to be. It was a very for a viewer a very enjoyable experience, especially considering just from a Celtics perspective, they were playing a bad Bulls team that they were blowing out virtually the entire game. And most people in that circumstance, except for crazy people like me who watch every second of every game, are turning that thing off after the third quarter. They're not bothering to watch, but it created a storyline and it created people wanting to see how the game played out and watching the whole way through because there was something at stake, up until the final buzzer, because the margin for the Celtics to get to advance was so thin that, a couple of threes don't go in and they do go in for Chicago. Then the Celtics are sitting at home and they're not, playing with the chance to go to Las Vegas. So I think it was, yes, of course, the NBA is the big winner. I will say the Celtics, I think, did in a little bit of a way bail out the NBA because this tournament, this knockout stage was lacking some premier teams. They got the Lakers in there. They got the Suns in there. And they got the Bucks in there and the Knicks. So they did get some premier teams, but they're missing the Sixers. They very nearly missed the Celtics. They didn't get the Mavericks or the defending champion Nuggets. They didn't get the Timberwolves, who are one of the hottest teams in the league, the Golden State Warriors. So the NBA, I think, would have liked to see what they thought was the 8 best teams. They're certainly not getting that, but maybe that's what's exciting about it for other fan bases, Sap, is that they can have something to root for besides, obviously, the Pacers are not winning the NBA championship, but who's to say they couldn't win 3 games in a row now and win the in-season tournament?
Yeah, I mean, it's good for them because we know that even if they squeak into the playoffs, it's probably going to come through the play-in, the Pacers, and how far are they going to go? They're trying to rebuild with, some really good, talented young players, but that's a process. Obviously, you want to see the Celtics beat Indiana, not just because this is kind of a Celtics-centric podcast, but you also want to see Milwaukee take care of the Knicks. So we see the Celtics, Milwaukee to get into the semifinals and meet to decide who's going to represent the Eastern Conference in the finals. And then you look at the Celtics and the Lakers and Suns. Unfortunately, they're meeting in the quarterfinals. That would have been a perfect semifinal matchup because could you just picture a Final Four of Celtics, Bucks, Lakers, and Suns? I mean, you can't get much better than that, right? You've got the biggest star in the league in LeBron, one of the great players of all time, and Durant, and what a lot of people think are the 2 best teams in basketball, the Celtics and the Bucks. So you would have an incredible foursome going there to Las Vegas. You're going to have either Sacramento or New Orleans in there. And again, those are interesting teams because you've got Zion. The thing about basketball that's always been interesting to me is that even the really bad teams, there's still players to watch. I mean, the Bulls aren't very good, but Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, still worth watching. Price of admission. They're exciting players. New Orleans is, had a nice season so far. Nothing great, but look, when he plays, Zion Williamson is must-watch TV. Same thing with Sacramento. You've got De'Aaron Fox. There's always someone on the roster that you want to see. It's not always the case in football, especially with the Patriots. Like, is there one guy in the Patriots you want to watch? I mean, Mac Jones, Bailey Zappi. The punter's really good. The kicker's not even good, and he was drafted in the 4th round. The best player on the team is your Oregon Duck, Christian Gonzalez, who played what?
2 games.
13 quarters this year and, got injured.
Yeah.
But he's the one player that you say you think he's going to be there in 5 years.
And the punter, Seth. Give him his flowers.
He's very, very good. That's all Bill Belichick, right? He loves punters. And maybe Bill Belichick can take the punter with him next year where he's coaching in, I don't know, Carolina, the Chargers, or wherever he's going. But in basketball, the worst team in basketball is who? Detroit or San Antonio? They've still got players you want to watch. Obviously, San Antonio with
2 number 1 picks.
Right. Cade Cunningham. So there's always someone there. So even if New Orleans makes it to the semis or the finals, you're going to see Zion. Hopefully he plays. So, yeah, all of that is a good thing for the NBA. But you're right. They would have preferred maybe the 76ers in there. Certainly the West has a deep conference, Dallas, Golden State, even the Clippers, because on any given night they can be almost unbeatable if those 4 superstars or former superstars have their act together. So, yeah, it would have been better to have some other teams. And Denver's the defending champs. And they would have made it if Jamal Murray hadn't just missed nearly 10 games.
Right.
I mean, they were playing at an incredible level. He gets injured, and obviously he's their second best player. But, yeah, if you get the Celtics, Bucks, either the Lakers, Suns, and whoever, that's going to be a pretty good semifinal matchups.
So, Sap, let's say they don't go into the like you said, add games and have it be 2 pods per conference. Right now, the storyline has been, at least amongst players and in the media too, the tiebreaker being that margin, that scoring margin. That's something that they took directly from soccer. It makes a lot more sense in soccer than it does in basketball, I think is fair to say, because, soccer games are not being scored in the hundreds of points. They're being scored if it's a really high scoring game, in the 6 or 7 goal range. And mostly it's in the 2 or 3 goal range. So I get what the players' issue is with it. And obviously I think some of the coaches were upset about it too. Is there a better, if they keep the group play as it is, Sap, with 15 teams per conference, 3 groups of 5. Is there a better tiebreaker than a point differential?
Well, it should be head to head, right? But then if that doesn't work, then you've got to go to point differential. So that's where the issue becomes. Now, if you've got 3 teams that are tied for 1 slot, the final slot, then it becomes point differential. It gets very confusing. Look, what has happened with this, though, with some of this friction that took place the other night, is now you've got a league that oftentimes gets criticized for too much fraternization among the players and coaches. And now all of a sudden you've got coaches yelling at each other, players not happy with other players. I think that's a good thing for the NBA, in a sense that it feels more old school. Like when I grew up watching basketball, especially the Celtics and Lakers in the 80s with Bird and Dr. J, who to this day don't like each other, right? So, it feels like the old days where the teams really didn't like each other. You have a little bit of that, and that's probably good for the league, because fraternization is sometimes considered a negative in the NBA because the players all kind of get along. There's a few players out there who don't really, necessarily mesh with everybody. Like Russell Westbrook's always kind of been a lone wolf. Rudy Gobert, they've kind of been their lone wolves, right? Like not the most likable guys, but for the most part, the top players. Yeah, Draymond. But Draymond's still got, I think, a lot of players on other teams that kind of like him. He kind of picks his spots, right? He's kind of a bully, right? He'll pick the weakest guy on the other team and bully him. But a lot of other guys in the league still like and respect him. But yeah, I mean, when it's kind of fun when the top players aren't necessarily all friends, and that makes it hyper competitive. Like I can't picture Kobe being friends with Allen Iverson. They didn't like each other. Right. So that maybe brings a little bit of that feel back, but I can't think of any other way. That's why I'd go with 2 pods instead of 3. Let me throw this one wild suggestion to you, Jet.
Sure.
Now, instead of having a 17 pod and an 18 pod, because now it's unbalanced, but you can make that up in terms of, the schedule, because they're still regular season games. They still count as regular season games. You could take the 2 teams that met in the finals a year ago and leave them out of the tournament. Make them exempt from the tournament, because I still don't buys. Know. No, automatically out of it.
Oh, like they're not even part of it. Oh, okay. I see what you're saying.
The only reason I say that is because I don't know how many players are really into this. Like, I think
Celtics seem into it.
they seemed into it. Joe Mazzulla certainly seems into it, but he's hyper competitive. He probably would fight for a parking spot with somebody. So that's the way he's kind of wired. That's just a wild suggestion. So like Denver and Miami wouldn't make it. You'd have 17 pods in each conference, and that would be more balanced. But you could still do it with a 17 pod, an 18 pod. In the 17 pod, you'd have 6 games. In the 18 pod, you'd have 7 games. And the tiebreaker would be head to head. You wouldn't have to worry about point differential. Whoever wins the pods, the 4 pods, 2 from the East, 2 from the West, they get advanced right to the semifinals. I think that could work, but again, that's maybe we just have to wait to do it that way when we add 2 expansion teams, because now you'd have 32 teams. Then you could have 4 18 pods. The in-season tournament would be 7 games rather than 4, and I think that would be just fine because it's not adding games; it's still regular season games.
Yep, they all count. The only thing that doesn't count is the championship game in the in-season tournament, that they're not keeping stats for record purposes in it, or counting it towards your regular season record. So that's the only.
So if someone scores 101
points
in that game, it's not going to break Chamberlain's record.
It will not. Okay. I guess that's what they're saying.
Think anybody's going to score 101 points.
It seems unlikely. It seems unlikely, but I guess you never know. Especially because Steph Curry is not in it, and he would have to go bananas from 3. We've talked about who could potentially do it. No one's going to do it. It doesn't matter. So, Sap, we touched on it briefly. Do you have any problem as a longtime basketball watcher with what the Celtics did to advance?
No, I don't. Those are the rules. That going into that game, they knew they had to win by X number of points. I would hope Chicago was aware of that as well. If they weren't, then they weren't prepared. They had no chance to get into the
they went 0-4. They went 0-4.
So they had no chance to get in, and they're in tank mode, right? Because they're going to eventually move on from DeRozan and Zach LaVine. And if you're really in tank mode, do it now. Don't wait till the trade deadline. Do it now so you really suck, and you can join like those 8 teams that I tweeted out today that have a winning percentage of 24%. The 4 worst teams in the East and the 4 worst teams in the West are god awful. Like they're just bad. They're already in tank mode from what I can see. The San Antonios and Detroits of the world. So go ahead and move Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan. No, I don't have a problem with it because that's the rules. And if you lay out the rules, the teams have to they don't have to follow it, but they want to advance. Then they have to go by the rules, and those are the rules. And I know Jaylen Brown kind of spoke out against it. And look, I like Jaylen Brown a lot, but he sometimes becomes holier than thou with a lot of things. And look, with his new contract, he needs $500,000 as much as I need, more calories. But nonetheless, I think it's still important that $500,000, not only for the lower end players, but for the coaching staff. Like if you're a coach making $750,000 a year, and I'm sure, lower level coaches don't even make that much. $500,000 is I wouldn't say life changing, but pretty darn good, right?
I'd say over half the coaches on the teams don't make $500,000 in a year.
Right. Yeah, Sam Cassell probably makes a couple million. He's a top level assistant.
Yeah, he's a top level assistant. Yeah.
Right. But
like what assistant, say like last year or before Udoka left, I can't imagine Mazzulla was pulling in more than $500,000 a year.
No, probably not. So he probably would have suited up and played if that was the case. If he was the second level assistant, he probably wanted that $500,000. Yeah, he may go out and play in the championship because at that point the stats don't count. It's not going to be put onto the regular season. Maybe Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown is like, we're not going out there, and maybe Joe Mazzulla will play and tackle someone at some point.
So I mean, the argument I've seen, is like from some people is like, it's not fun that they were fouling somebody and sending him to the free throw line in the fourth quarter of a blowout game, but they acted like that was like what was happening the entire fourth quarter. I mean, they fouled him like 4 times. It wasn't really taking up that much time, and for the most part, even though it was a blowout, I thought the fourth quarter was like pretty back and forth pace. The Bulls didn't want the Celtics to advance. They were, even though they put in their subs, those guys were still trying out there. And like, those are meaningful minutes for those guys. They're not going to just lay down. And the Celtics were still trying to push the ball and score. And it was nice to see the Celtics for once actually not blow a big lead.
Maybe that's the mentality they're going to have to take. Just pretend all of these games are in-season tournament games and that they need to win by a certain margin and they'll take care of business. But you know what the Bulls could have done, Jet? Just send Andre Drummond to the bench. Like,
yeah, why not?
Was it necessary for him to play? I mean, he's not Shaq. Like when it was Hack-a-Shaq, okay, we're not going to bench Shaq.
Right.
but it's Andre Drummond. You go to the bench. You're a nuisance right now to our team, a hindrance to our team.
Yeah, no, it's a good point, Sap. So yeah, and I mean, what else do you want? You want the Celtics to not try? The whole point is to try to get in. Why
Mm-hmm.
why are you advocating for a team to just be like, we're going to play this like any other game? You want it to be a special sort of thing. So again, I think I have no problem with it. And I think, like you said, Andre Drummond's made a lot of money in his career, like hit the free throws. And that really wasn't even the story of the game. The Celtics were blowing him out before that anyways. For the
Right.
Chicago Bulls, be better. You guys have good players in your roster. Don't get down by 30 points by the end of the third quarter, so I have totally no problem with it. I'm excited to see what this new knockout stage looks like. It should be interesting. I think the players will be into the single elimination thing and play pretty hard. And they have been playing pretty hard for all these tournament games. So far through year one, and we still have a couple of games left, obviously, I'd say it's been a success. And so Adam Silver continues to prove he's an innovator and he's got good ideas. And like all things, it's not perfect, but you can certainly continue to tweak it, and it should be better with some tweaks. And so the NBA owners must be ecstatic that they have Adam Silver as the commissioner representing them, I would think.
Well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm Facebook friends with Commissioner Silver. We have the same
Nice.
birth date. He's a year older than I am. Both born on April 25th. So he's 1 year older than I am. So, I'll direct message him that here are my suggestions to improve the thing. And the thing about Adam Silver is he listens to the players more so than David Stern did, for sure. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
David Stern was commissioner for 30 years? I'd say his first 18, 19 years, probably the greatest commissioner in the history of sports. Now, he benefited because when he became commissioner, Michael Jordan was a rookie and they
Yeah.
had Larry Bird, Magic Johnson. So,
Not bad.
he had some good things going for him at that point, but he really helped expand the game. And Jordan's still the most influential figure in the history of the NBA, maybe in all of American sports, with the possible exception of Jackie Robinson. But Stern was a very successful commissioner. Adam Silver's a little bit different. He doesn't rule with an iron fist like David Stern did, but he'll listen to the players, and I'm sure whether it's LeBron or Jaylen Brown, some of the leaders in the league, Chris Paul, Steph Curry, whoever has his cell phone number and can get a hold of him and talk to him and maybe come up with some suggestions for this. But the key here is the stars seem to be involved in this, especially the biggest star in the league. LeBron seems to embrace this. When that happens, everyone else kind of falls in place.
Yeah, sure. The Lakers were the most dominant team in the in-season tournament to date, going 4-0 and having the biggest score differential of plus 74. So they took it seriously, Sep. Unfortunately for them, they got that tough draw of the Phoenix Suns as the wild card team. And the Suns have been playing really good basketball, even without Bradley Beal. They're starting to turn it on. So that's what's going on in the in-season tournament. And that's pretty much dominated most of the NBA conversation the past week. Though we got a little wrinkle thrown in the other day as out of nowhere, Mark Cuban sold a controlling interest or is about to sell a controlling interest of the Dallas Mavericks to the Adelson family, casino magnates. But it is a very unique deal in that Mark Cuban will remain the governor of the franchise and in control of all basketball decisions. So despite not having a controlling stake in the franchise because of the way he's written this deal, or his lawyers, I should say, he still is the head of their basketball stuff. And I've never quite seen a deal like this, Sap. It's definitely fits his personality to do a unique deal like this, but him leaving, selling so much of the team came seemingly out of nowhere.
It really did. We didn't hear anything about this till it happened. And good for Mark Cuban to keep this a secret. And it just popped up at the moment's notice. And again, he's selling the controlling interest. I think he's still going to hold a minority share at some point. So he's still got some value in the team, but he's going to still be the person running things. I don't know how long that's going to last. Like, maybe that's for a year or two. So there's a transition. And then the Adelson family will take over and they'll put their own person in charge. This again, Sheldon Adelson, who again, as you said, casino magnate. I believe he passed away. His wife has control of the family fortune, and at some point they'll maybe put their own people in charge. and then go from there. But Dallas is a good franchise. You've got one of the 5 best players in the world in Luka Doncic. Got Kyrie Irving. The team has played well, so you're buying a very valuable franchise in a really good sports market and a top 5 or 6 media market. So that's a great thing for the new owners of the Dallas Mavericks. Now, there was one rumor out there, and you hear all these rumors when something like this happens, that maybe they want to relocate the Mavericks to Vegas, but I think it makes more sense that maybe at some point Mark Cuban wants to be part of the ownership group in Vegas, along with, say, LeBron James, right? Or if LeBron James is still with the Fenway Sports Group, maybe it's John Henry that is going to bid for the Vegas franchise, because at some point, probably within the next 2 or 3 years, we're going to see talk of and action of building a franchise in Vegas and probably Seattle to get the league to 32 teams. If that's the case, then maybe Mark Cuban's on board with LeBron or with a different group to buy the expansion franchise in Las Vegas. That could be a possibility as well. And then there was another rumor, Ben Maller, who we both like a lot, and I know you worked with him when he would fill in at WEI as the overnight guy on Fox Sports Radio. I think he's fantastic. Is there a rumor out there that Mark Cuban's going to run for president? Like, I don't.
There is,
yeah. Now, as what, a third party candidate? Like, I
don't know
pay
at this
to
point.
see. Yeah, I mean, let's be totally chaotic. I mean, we've only got a 80-year-old and a 77-year-old guy that are going to decide the next president of the United States. So what's this? Like a best 2 out of 3. Feels like more of a boxing match where one guy wins the first match and we're going to have a second match. 4 years later in this case. But how chaotic would it be? Imagine a debate with Trump, Biden, and Mark Cuban. I mean, that would be. I'd pay to watch that.
Yeah, and I think the rumors also coming from he's floated it out in the past, Mark Cuban, but he also has said he's leaving Shark Tank too. So that's 2 big life decisions. Leaving, selling. So ultimately, I'll just get the math part out of the way. The valuation of the team was $3.5 billion. The Allison family is paying $2 billion for their stock, so there still remains, by my maths, Sap, $1.5 billion worth of interest.
Yeah, about 43%. Yeah, 43% of it.
That's
so
split amongst some people. It's not just Mark Cuban,
right?
But so they're getting the controlling interest. Which just shows the value of NBA teams is just skyrocketed.
I'm surprised it wasn't worth more, Jet, when you think
well,
about
the Suns got bought for $4 billion by Matt Ishbia, Sap, last year. And
wouldn't you think Dallas is worth a little bit more because of the media market?
I would. Yeah. I mean, I guess it all depends on what somebody's just willing to pay for it. But Dallas is a bigger media market than Phoenix.
Yeah.
So yeah, the Jazz got bought in 2020 for $1.6 billion. That makes sense that it would be more than double. The Mavericks would be worth more than double the Jazz. I could see that. It's a very small market.
Houston was sold somewhat recently for a little over $2 billion.
Yeah, $2.2 billion, which also seems low considering how big Houston is.
Yep, Charlotte was sold recently.
But Sap, meanwhile, I was going to say, like if you look at the Suns, they got bought in 2004 initially by Robert Sarver for $401 million. $85 million in 1993 was the price for the Rockets. The Clippers were bought for $2 billion by Steve Ballmer. They were bought initially for $12.5 million. So regardless of whether we think it's low or not low, the prices have still just ballooned like crazy.
Sure. Well, again, this is a worldwide sport, right? You've got so much money coming in from China, and the next TV contract is going to bring in about $275 million a year per team. That's a pretty good starting point, right? When you start your fiscal year and you're handed a check for $275 million just for the TV rights, let alone local radio, local TV, merchandising, ticket sales, money from China, money from the African continent. I mean, it's just a global game. I mean, the money that comes in is astronomical. And then you're talking about smaller roster sizes, right? You're only talking about 15 players. And let's face facts, the bottom 5 don't make much money. The top 5 make a ton of money, but the payroll of an NBA franchise is still less than NFL franchises. I mean, NFL salary cap is going to go up to about $275 million, plus the size of the front offices in the NFL are
massive.
Huge compared to basketball.
The coaching staffs are massive in the NFL.
Yeah, travel. I mean, when you travel to an away game, you're taking a city with you. So,
Right.
yeah, I mean, buying an NBA franchise is a wise thing. The Celtics in 1983 were sold for $12 million, and then I believe in 2003, so 20 years later, went for 350 million. Rick
Right
Grossbeck
around there.
bought it for, and now it's probably worth $4 billion. The only
360
thing about
is actually, just looked it up, Sap.
360, 3.360 for Rick Grossbeck, so it's gone up probably 10 times in the last 20 years, 1,000%. The only thing about the Celtics, they don't own the arena. So that kind of will lower the value of the franchise, where the Bruins own the arena. But if you own the arena, now it goes up even more. Mark Cuban and the Dallas Mavericks own that arena. So that will increase the market size. So yeah, he's an interesting guy. I've always liked him. He did not have a good relationship with David Stern. I think he has a much better relationship with Adam Silver. It's probably a lot easier to have a better relationship with Adam Silver than David Stern. And again, Cuban, when he first bought the team, was in his early 40s. He was full of piss and vinegar, so he was constantly battling.
$285 million is what he did.
Not bad. Not bad.
And he just made turned that around to $2 billion more dollars. I mean,
we got to buy a team.
Doesn't need the money.
That's what we got to do. We got to buy a team at some point.
Yeah, that's exactly what we should do. It's really a shame we didn't. When we had the money, the $100 million, we could have bought the team, Sap.
Yeah,
when you and I were working, that was about our salary at the Herald.
Yeah.
Yep.
Pretty much. Yeah. Because you could become the general manager, and I don't know what the hell I would do. I would just kind of show up at the games. I'd be Steve Ballmer. Just be a loud guy.
The lead scout or the analytics guy, Sap.
Sure.
You'd run the numbers.
Absolutely. I'd bring
you'd
LeBron
be like,
in. That would be the
you'd
first
be like Jonah Hill from Moneyball.
Come on. Don't
not
Jonah Hill.
Appearance-wise, Sap. His character from Moneyball. His character. He's a real person that he played. I just don't remember his name.
I liked him better in The Wolf of Wall Street. I thought he was really great in that.
Well, two good movies, nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, well, you get together with Scorsese, you're usually pretty good.
Yeah.
Not both movies. He didn't do Moneyball, but he did The Wolf of Wall Street.
Although he would have, I'm sure he would have done a great job with Moneyball too.
We would need some Rolling Stones songs in Moneyball. That would have been perfect.
I'd like to see him do a sports movie. That would be interesting.
Well, he did do a sports movie. I think it's the greatest movie
Raging Bull, but I'm saying that was way before I was even born, Sap. So revisit it.
You can still see it. It was 1980. That doesn't mean you can't see it. The world didn't start in 1988. What was it, 88 or 89 you were born?
89.
Okay, you had to think there for a second. You're getting that old. You can't remember what year. Yeah. So 1989, probably the best movie of 1989. I would say Do the Right Thing.
Okay, what won the Oscar that year?
That Driving Miss Daisy.
Oh, which was not the best movie of 1989.
No. In fact, the director of that movie didn't even get nominated for Best Director. That happens every decade, once in a while. Like Argo won Best Picture in 2012, and
I love that movie, by the way.
Great movie. Was excellent.
And Ben Affleck wasn't nominated, right?
He wasn't even nominated for Best Director. I thought Lincoln should have won Best Picture, but it got some pushback because there was some factual inaccuracies in that. But the point being, it's drama. Sometimes you have to.
You love Daniel Day-Lewis, Sap. You're a big Daniel Day-Lewis guy.
He's pretty good. He's such a great actor that he actually was assassinated in that movie.
And he hasn't been seen since.
He hasn't been seen since. He took the role seriously.
Yeah, he has not. So, Mark Cuban gets richer. The NBA is happy because the valuations, keep going up, which is good for the league. And now they have they're in bed with another gambling sort of entity,
right?
Which just seems like that's the way things are going now.
Yeah.
I saw there was a story today too. I mean, we're not gonna have really time to talk about, but was it Maverick Carter was betting on games with an illegal bookie? But it's like at this point, first of all, why are you even using an illegal bookmaker? It's so easy to gamble on sports. I think this happened in 2021. But for Maverick Carter, who has a private plane anywhere he wants, just fly to a state where it's legal. So
right.
I don't know.
Why are you even gambling if you're worth $250 million? I mean, well, ask Michael Jordan.
I was gonna say ask Barkley, ask Phil Mickelson.
They all like to. Yo, man, that guy's got a serious issue. It's not a problem if you pay, and sometimes Michael Jordan was known not to pay.
Well, he would. I'm sure he would never accept because he gambled primarily on golf, right? His own golfing.
His own golfing, yeah.
So I'm sure he had a hard time admitting he was going to lose. Yeah, he should play Trump in golf. Just that's what should be the next match
awesome.
instead of, those football players, Trump and Jordan, neither one would ever admit they lost.
That'd be great. All you need is Kim Jong-un, who claims his
Yeah, he
father,
got
Kim
an 18.
Jong-il, got an 18, which is
Yep.
pretty good. And Vladimir Putin apparently scored 9 goals the first time he ever played hockey. So the 4 of those guys would be quite a foursome. Put Kim Jong-un in there because his dad is no longer with us. There's your foursome. Remember I wrote a column once at the Herald about, 3 dinner guests?
Yeah.
There's a foursome. Trump, Jordan, Kim Jong-un, and Vladimir Putin. I like it.
Yeah.
And Trump's friends with all of them, so why not?
Yeah. It would be a great game. I'd watch that way more than I'd watch Patrick Mahomes versus, whoever the hell they had. Josh Allen, who'd he play?
Yeah, Josh Allen. It was, I think it was the year it was Brady and Rodgers against Allen and Mahomes. I thought was pretty good because Rodgers is phenomenal. He was the best golfer out of the group. Obviously the best quarterback as well.
Come on.
But Allen and Mahomes drove the ball like 400 yards. I mean, they're both, just powerful young guys and no idea where they were going with the ball, but it was gone pretty far. Rodgers and Brady had a much better short game, like, as they were as quarterbacks. More finesse, more accuracy.
Older people do.
That's true. Yeah, when you're 26 and you're 6'5", 240, driving the ball isn't really an issue.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm excited to see how the in-season tournament finishes up. We're going to talk about it. We'll be able to react to the first round of the knockout things before we get to Vegas. So we'll have plenty to talk about next week when we do the show. And I'm now just geared up for my Oregon Ducks in football tomorrow. So between the hours of 8 and I'd say like 11:30 Eastern time, I will be just locked in.
I'm rooting for them. I want to see them get to the national Final Four.
We could see the next Patriots quarterback, Sap, either Bo Nix or Michael Penix Jr. Maybe the next Patriots quarterback.
If they're drafting 3rd, I think they could do better than those guys.
Is there any universe in which they get a top pick and don't trade down?
As long as Bill Belichick is gone. No, he can't be here. There's no way. Look, 82 and 99 in 11 seasons without Tom Brady, 8 losing seasons in 11 seasons without Tom Brady. What the hell are they doing?
I think he's back, and they either trade down or they draft the big tight end from Georgia, Bowers, who's really good. But he'd be the first tight end ever taken at number 1, right? Has that ever happened before?
No, I think the highest drafted tight end was at number 5.
Pitts?
Who's the tight end in Atlanta?
Yeah, Pitts.
Kyle Pitts. Yeah, he was the highest drafted tight end.
Get ready, Patriots Nation.
Oh yeah, or nose tackle if those even exist anymore.
Another kicker.
Georgia's defensive lineman, a kicker, and a safety, and he's got to go. If Belichick's back, Kraft should have his head examined.
We'll see, but we'll be back. We'll see if Belichick's still here next week. I think he'll be here at least at the end of the season, Sap.
I think it would be great if they fired him the day before the Army-Navy game.
So mean, Sap. Come on.
I am mean.
It's not as
Tom over Bill every day of the year.
Well, it seems that's been proven time and time again. Too. You know what else? Yes. We have about a minute left. I don't like that your guy Aaron Rodgers is pretending like he's actually going to come back from this injury. He is not going to play a regular season game, Sap. He's not. There's no chance.
Why would you say that? He's on some miracle drug that cured the Achilles tear, so he's going to come back. No, he shouldn't come back, especially at 4-7.
Egomaniac.
4-10 by the. Of course, he's an egomaniac. We know that. He would
unlike Tom Brady, who has no ego.
No ego at all. Yeah, you could put Rodgers. Rodgers would fit into that foursome as well.
Yeah. I'd watch that too. All right. Well, that's going to do it for us here at the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap. Thanks to Full Press Coverage. As always, go check out their website and check out our social medias at JohnSap25, at Jet Stroud. We'll be back next week with a fresh edition of the podcast. Thanks for listening, everybody, and we will talk to you then. See ya.